kids, and welcome to day 3. Wow, we have already learned so much about how God created everything and how it was ruined because of a terrible thing called sin that separates us from God and is the cause of a lot of sadness and trouble in this world. Do you remember God's promise that He had a plan to rescue us? Well, God never breaks a promise. So let's find out about this special rescue plan He has for us. Our theme today is the rescue plan. Our verse, that God so loved the world that He gave His only Son. John 3:16. Say that with me this time, and let's use some fun hand motions. That God so loved the world that He gave His only Son. John 3:16. Awesome! This is such great news, friends. Now let's grab those maracas and sing along.
Rescue plan. Rescue plan. Ain't nobody got no but Jesus. Ain't nobody gonna save us but God. Ain't nobody gonna save us but Jesus. Ain't nobody gonna save us but God. Ain't nobody gonna save us but Jesus. Ain't nobody gonna save us but God. Ain't nobody gonna save us but Jesus, 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 yeah. This is the rescue plan. This is the rescue plan. For God save man, because only He can. This is the rescue plan. This is the rescue plan. For God save man, because only He can. The rescue plan.
Hi boys and girls, I'm so excited to get to read to you today. I'm going to read to you our next story out of the Promises of God book. And this story has some sad parts to it, and it's okay to feel sad while I'm reading it because what happens is very, very sad. But it's not the end of our story. We have a really great ending to tell you about. Let me show you the first picture in our story today called The Dark Promise. Do you see? It's Jesus and two soldiers. Let's hear about that picture. After the crowd told Pilate to crucify Jesus, the soldiers took Jesus to a room where they began to get him ready to be killed. They made fun of him, saying that he was the king of God's people by putting a purple robe on him, like a king might wear. Then they took some branches with sharp cutting thorns and twisted them into a crown. See this right here? They pushed the crown down hard on Jesus' head so that the thorns cut his skin deeply and hurt him. But they didn't stop. They beat Jesus with sticks and spit on him. Through all of this, he was silent and he did not fight back. Then they took the purple robe off him and put his own clothes back on him to take him out to put him to death. The way Jesus was going to die was called crucifixion. And it was the worst possible way someone could die. 2 huge pieces of wood were nailed together to make a cross shape. Soldiers would actually nail a prisoner's hands and feet onto the wood, attaching the prisoner to the cross. Then he would hang there until his body was not able to breathe anymore, because our bodies weren't made to be hung on crosses of wood. That's what happened to Jesus. The soldiers nailed him to a cross between 2 other men who were also being crucified. The painful crown of thorns was still on his head. A crowd gathered while he hung there on a cross, because this isn't a death that happens fast. It is slow and painful and horrible to watch, and was especially horrible for Jesus because people kept yelling mean things at him. You might be feeling really sad right now reading or listening to this. But have hope, because remember that this was God's plan, and God's plans actually turn out to be good. So even though Jesus was crucified and had to die, God was keeping his promise. See, here's a picture. This would be Jesus on the cross next to the 2 other people who were also on the cross that day. After Jesus was on the cross several hours, a very long time to be made fun of and to hurt so badly, the Bible says that it became dark over the whole land. And then a few hours later, Jesus cried out saying, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Then he let out a loud cry and breathed his last breath. He was dead on the cross, and right when this happened, the temple curtain that separated God's people from the presence of God was torn in half. There was also a great earthquake across the land, and many rocks split, and some of God's people who had been dead came back to life. The soldiers who saw all this were amazed and scared, and they said to each other, "Surely he was the Son of God." Jesus' disciples had been there and had seen the whole thing, and they were sadder than sad had ever been. They gathered Jesus' body and wrapped it carefully with much love. Then they placed his body inside a tomb, which is kind of like a cave where people are buried. The soldiers made them put a huge rock in front of the tomb, one that it took many strong men to move. You see, they're putting the rock in front of the tomb. The soldiers who saw Jesus die were right, of course. He was the Son of God, and now he was dead. How could that be? How could God die? Why would God die? Well, remember in the garden when God told Adam and Eve that if they ate from the forbidden tree, death would come? Death had now come to the Son of God, but it had come for a reason. And it had come to show that death would be destroyed by the Son of God. Sometime later, 2 women who had been followers of Jesus went to see the tomb. They were still so sad at the thought just being near Jesus' body would make them feel better. As they got to the tomb, there was another earthquake, and an angel appeared who had a face that shone like lightning. He had rolled back the stone, was sitting on top of it, and announced that Jesus was not there because he had risen from the dead. The angel told them to go and see that the tomb was empty, and then to go tell his disciples that Jesus was alive and would see them soon. Here's that picture of that. The women did as the angel commanded and were filled with joy as they did. As they left, they saw Jesus. They immediately fell at his feet and worshiped him because they knew he was the Son of God. He was the Redeemer. He was the rescuer. He had beaten death just like God had promised and would happen all the way back. He had beaten death just like God had promised would happen all the way back in the garden. The head of the snake was crushed. Jesus told the woman to hurry and to tell his disciples the good news that he was alive. The women obeyed, praising their great God who keeps his promises. This story is from Matthew 28 and Matthew 27. I hope you liked it.
We were lost after the terrible flood. Then God sent Jesus to be our King. He died to save us so that we are now sons and daughters of our Father too. This is the rescue plan. This is the rescue plan for God save man, because only He can. This is the rescue plan. This is the rescue plan for God save man, because only He can. The rescue plan. We were lost after the terrible thing. When God sent Jesus to be our King, He died to save us so that we are made new, sons and daughters of our Father too. This is the rescue plan. This is the rescue plan for God save man, because only He can. This is the rescue plan. This is the rescue plan for God save man, because only He can. The rescue plan. Ain't nobody got no but Jesus. Ain't nobody gonna save us but God. Ain't nobody gonna save us but Jesus. Ain't nobody gonna save us but God. Ain't nobody gonna save us but Jesus. Ain't nobody gonna save us but God. Ain't nobody gonna save us but Jesus, 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 yeah. This is the rescue plan. This is the rescue plan for God save man, because only He can. This is the rescue plan. This is the rescue plan for God save man, because only He can. The rescue plan.
We have a very special snack today, kids, and it's gonna help you remember the story that we just read about Jesus being hurt on the cross and dying for us and for our sins. Sometimes you might see your parents take communion. It's a word that we use in church, and you might have seen them eat a piece of bread and drink grape juice from a little cup. which is kind of like what you're going to do today. See, God is so kind to us. What he does is he gives us things so that we can remember the stories of the Bible. He even said, I want you, as you take this bread or this cracker, to remember that my body was kind of like this cracker. And you know how easy it is to break a cracker? Well, my body was broken for you. And then he wants us to drink the little bit of grape juice so that we remember that his blood was spilled for us, that he got hurt, his body got hurt for us. And the reason that his body was hurt for us and the reason that he had to bleed was so that we could be forgiven by God, so that we could stand before God and God would say, I love you and accept you because of what Jesus has done. So today, when you take your special snack and you get your cracker and your grape juice, you can remember about the story that we read today, that Jesus's body is like the cracker and it can break really easy, and Jesus's blood was spilled or poured out for us so that we could know he really does love us and want to be with us.
Say that verse again with me. This is such a great verse that we can hold in our hearts. That God so loved the world that he gave his only son. John 3:16. The good news is that Jesus didn't stay dead in that tomb, but he rose from the dead and is alive. He had beaten death, just like God had promised, and the head of the snake was crushed. Remember from day 2 in the garden? Jesus told the women to hurry and tell everyone the good news that Jesus is alive. We can share that good news with everyone we know too, that Jesus is alive and he loves us all so much. Here are a few questions I want to leave you thinking about. How did the soldiers treat Jesus before he was crucified? What happened after he died? How do you think the disciples felt watching Jesus on the cross? How do you feel thinking about it? What happened to Jesus after a couple of days dead in the tomb? Lots to think about. See you tomorrow.